Top story in America tonight is Donald Trump, your president, pardoning criminals. Now, Trump's not even pretending this is about due process. He's ignoring the Justice Department's review program and simply tweeted out today a pardon plan for a right-wing activist who was convicted of campaign finance violations. Critics say it's a quite obvious message to Trump aides facing criminal pressure right now, from Michael Cohen, who just lost that battle to try to keep his papers and tapes away from the feds, to Paul Manafort, and perhaps even to Trump aides who are already cooperating with Bob Mueller, like Michael Flynn. Indeed, some of the pardons under discussion right now with this news are for the exact same things that some Trump aides are accused of. Reports that Donald Trump might grant early release to a politician currently imprisoned for charges relating to bribery. That's former Illinois Governor Rod Blagojevich. Also granting a pardon to a famous former Apprentice contestant who's out of jail but lied to the feds. Discussions about a pardon or commutation for Martha Stewart. Trump also stating he will give out his fifth pardon as president to this right-wing activist, Dinesh D'Souza. He made a slashing film attacking Barack Obama.
Now, Obama came out of nowhere. No one really knew him. If Obama seems weirdly sympathetic to Muslim jihadis captured in Afghanistan, we now know why. He sees these guys as anti-colonial freedom fighters, like his dad, the occupied people pushing out the occupiers.
No word on whether that film itself was criminal. Now, the move is pretty blatant here, but I want to be clear with you as we report this out. This is supposed to be blatant. Donald Trump, of course, ran on getting tough on crime, but the White House tonight not even really offering a detailed policy explanation for this new pardon or pointing to the reasons that the DOJ would see it as consistent with Trump administration criminal justice policy. No. The message here is pretty clearly in the implication. If Trump will pardon right-wing activists whom he barely knows and pardon people for crimes related to bribery and campaign finance reform and obstruction, then imagine what he's willing to do someday for people he does know. Now, here are the facts on Trump's pardons today. D'Souza admitted to a crime to help Republicans. Sheriff Joe Arpaio endorsed Trump, and he was in the middle of a case holding him in contempt for defying a judge. Then, of course, former Bush White House aide Scooter Libby, who was convicted of obstructing a special counsel investigation. Yes, a special counsel probe. And that's not all. Libby and Blagojevich were prosecuted by none other than Pat Fitzgerald. Now, he's the prosecutor James Comey chose to lead the last special counsel investigation into White House alleged misconduct. And Stewart, guess what? She was prosecuted by Comey himself.
Meet the man who wants to put Martha Stewart in jail.
Martha Stewart is being prosecuted not because of who she is, but because of what she did.
Tonight, we're again seeing this portrait of Donald Trump as quite detail-oriented when it comes to legal strategy to discredit anyone who might check either his current power or something he may have in his legal past. We also know Trump delights in getting away with breaking norms. He's prepping the nation for a soft stance on obstruction and corruption by Stewart and Blagojevich. And in doing so, Trump may be trying to prove to everyone that we all have to just accept these kind of pardons. Probably doesn't hurt that Trump already knew these people.
So, Governor, what did you think of the boardroom?
I thought it was an interesting experience.
Hi, Donald. It's Martha.
How are you?
I'm just great. How are you?
Well, I'm having a great time, and you have a really attractive group of winners.
This is real life now. Trump is out here showing exactly how far he will go to, there's no other legal way to say it, given the conviction history, how far he will go to coddle criminals, at least the criminals he knows and finds useful. Now, many people note pardon power, when you look at it legally, it is unreviewable. Now, that's lawyer speak for the fact that presidents, they get to just do it. Judges don't oversee or reverse individual pardons. Now, some people think that means that you can basically do anything with a pardon. That's not true, and this is more important tonight. The law does not go that far. Ironically, the legal precedent for this limit comes from the very case that Trump is exploring a pardon for, the corruption of Governor Rod Blagojevich. He was using the power to appoint a senator in a vacancy. Now, that power is also legally unreviewable, meaning judges do not overturn a governor's pick for an eligible person to become senator. But, and it's a big but, Blagojevich committed a separate crime while trying to make that pick because he tried to sell that Senate seat he was appointing. So legally the appointment was unreviewable, but he still committed a crime that lands him in jail to this day. And that same legal logic can apply to pardons tonight. If you imagine, say, a governor selling pardons, or imagine a governor trying to openly use pardons to obstruct justice, well, those can be separate crimes too. I turn now to former federal prosecutor John Flannery, as well as Lynn Sweet, Washington bureau chief for the Chicago Sun-Times, who knows many of these stories quite well. John, let's begin with your view of the way Donald Trump is doing these pardons and this discussion of potential future pardon power clemency acts. And number two, the legal point I raise, that just because something's unreviewable doesn't mean there's no way it can be also used pursuant to a crime.
Pardon me. I think that the problem here is that what he's done is, I agree with what you said, that he'd like to tenderize other people to think maybe Trump won't think of himself, because he will be thinking of himself if he gives me a pardon. But I think he's doing something much more dramatic, which is in a violation of his oath. He is attacking our entire criminal justice system with the specific crimes that he himself is involved in. I mean, Blagojevich was impeached. This president may be impeached. Blagojevich was charged with pay to play, and he was convicted, and he twice went to the Supreme Court. So we have a solid case in which process was observed, and he is discounting it. He is trying to tell America that there was something wrong with the system in that case. Same with Martha Stewart, who lied. And D'Souza's marching band, he basically was committing a campaign finance violation, like our boy in New York, Cohen, involved with the Daniels case. So I think that what we have is an attack on the entire system of justice from the Ministry of Truth, and I don't think that's an appropriate use of the power to pardon anyone. I think it's a violation of his oath.
Do you think that even an unreviewable act can still be caught up in a criminal conspiracy?
Absolutely. An overt act, which is not even a crime, can be part of a criminal conspiracy to obstruct. It can be part of a crime to unfairly posture an entire investigation in a discredited way, because you're attacking the entire system. So much for law and order. We would rather have chaos and disorder, because that's the only way I think he sees he can get out of this. He's in a corner.
Right. Let me go to Lynn. Lynn, go ahead.
Well, I want to just point out some other facts here. I know you're talking of this in a mega situation, but let's look at the specifics and why having Rod Blagojevich campaign to get some kind of clemency from President Trump, and it's been waged by his wife, and just getting it in front of the president, which she now has been able to do. We could talk about how I think she did it. Here's something to remind everyone and you: he is not gone unpunished. He has gotten a 14-year sentence. A lot of people, myself included, think that was a very heavy sentence for the crimes committed. He's been imprisoned in Colorado since 2011.
Well, and as you know, Lynn, those kind of facts only apply to the governor of Illinois.
Yes.
There are no other Americans, for example, hundreds of thousands of black Americans on nonviolent drug offenses that go on years and years that the president has taken an interest in. I mean, I think it is true what you say, and you're on tonight because you've covered it extensively out of Chicago, but certainly we would be missing the forest from the trees to think that that's Donald Trump's concern, no?
No, I don't think that's a concern. I'm just pointing that out, since it should be in the mix of our more universal conversation here. And yes, and President Obama focused on the very people you were talking about. And if we need yet another contrast between Presidents Obama and Trump, it's how they use the clemency process here. But if we're looking for some commonality, we have, as you pointed out, these kind of people who are celebrities or are names in the news that have come. The boxer Jack Johnson also just got a posthumous clearance from the president. It also goes to his impulse, I think, to deal with big names. And yes, of course, there's a big discussion we could have about how you use a pardon process and if he will use it to continue the work of what President Obama did for people who are serving in these drug cases.
And let me get John briefly, though, on one other piece of this, which is, John, do you think that any of this could itself become a subject to Mueller's probe?
Absolutely. I think that the way he's abusing the system, having taken the oath of office to uphold the Constitution, and then to tear apart the entire system and judges and orders, and indeed the judge who gave him, the Blagojevich, the 14-year sentence, he had a second opportunity to do it when this case was being appealed twice to the Supreme Court. I have crocodile tears for a person like this that compromised an entire state and was so interested in replacing Barack Obama that at one point he said, "I'm blacker than Barack Obama," a kind of person that would appeal to this president.
And
I don't think we should have any compassion at all for that kind of misconduct by a corrupt official.
And as you mentioned, much of that was what came out on tapes. Tapes seem to figure into these probes. John Flannery and Lynn Sweet, thank you both. I turn now to New York Congressman Hakeem Jeffries, who's on the House Judiciary Committee. What do you think of this use of the pardon power, and what should be done about it?
Well, I think that the pardon power, first of all, is a old school throwback to the days of the constitutional monarchy that we need to revisit, because the unfettered ability to pardon individuals without any process, any guardrails, any guidelines, clearly is subject to abuse, as we're now seeing from Donald Trump. And it appears that there is a pattern, as you laid out, Ari, where this pardon power is being used to send signals to people who are within the sights of Bob Mueller's criminal probe, to perhaps urge them not to cooperate with the ongoing criminal investigation into the Trump campaign. Does it
concern you that that's the goal, or do you think it's a coincidence that these relate to past special counsels?
Well, I don't think it's a coincidence that these charges, for instance, relate to campaign finance abuse, or abuse of power, or obstruction of justice, or lying to the federal government. These are some of the charges upon which individuals have already pled guilty or are being prosecuted or potentially investigated. And so I think it's reasonable for people to at least be suspicious that that is exactly what's taking place. The other problem with this pardon ability, as you pointed out, is that everyday Americans don't have access to the presidential review process, since it's just being done by an individual who's bouncing off the walls in the Oval Office, coming up with the next great idea to pardon some conservative cause celebrity.
No, it would seem if you take the president's process as it's been publicly executed, you need to either endorse him in a primary, be on The Apprentice, or have the kind of Twitter following that can get you so up his mentions that he notices, because he's literally doing this by tweet. I mean, this is not a joke. As for Dinesh D'Souza, he spoke about this today. Here was his take.
I'm very relieved to have my record clean. I mean, in a way, this fully restores my faith in America, my American dream. Something is hanging over you when you have the United States of America versus Dinesh D'Souza, and that is now gone.
I mean, legally, the case is over. He had confessed and admitted guilt, and taking the pardon, of course, only reasserts that, right?
Absolutely. And, the president takes an oath to uphold the Constitution and faithfully execute the laws of the United States of America, and yet he is systematically undermining the rule of law, attacking the special prosecutor, attacking the FBI, attacking the Department of Justice, apparently abusing the pardon power that has been given to him, which we in Congress, I believe, the Judiciary Committee, should review to figure out whether some guardrails need to be put into place.
If your party becomes the majority in the judiciary, is the pardon issue something you would look to constrain?
Well, absolutely. It seems to me something that should be put on the table. Now, as you know, to constrain it would require a constitutional amendment, which would necessitate significant majorities in both the House and the Senate, a presidential signature or a presidential veto override.
When I worked on the Hill, they had an old saying, a constitutional amendment passing is about as likely as Donald Trump becoming president.
Well, anything is possible.
You know that saying, Congressman.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I appreciate you coming on, and we saw some of what you were saying about this. You've been speaking out about this from the Judiciary Committee today. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
For coming by the beat. We have a lot more in the show, including this bombshell audio leaking tonight of Michael Cohen in action, caught on tape making threats to protect Trump.
I'm warning you. Tread very lightly, because what I'm going to do to you is going to be disgusting. Rest assured, you will suffer the consequence.
That's playing for the first time tonight, and we'll have it for you after the break. Also, an important story. The woman whose accusations put Bill Cosby on trial is speaking out for the first time.
I was crying out inside, in my throat, in my mind, for this to stop, and I couldn't do anything. And
Howard Stern revealing what Trump wanted from him during the campaign, plus what Chuck and I were discussing, John Boehner's truth bomb on the GOP.
There is no Republican Party. There's a Trump party. The Republican Party is kind of taking a nap somewhere.
Also, Tony Schwartz joins me at 30 Rock talking Trump and the art of deception. I'm Ari Melber. You're watching The Beat on MSNBC. Breaking news tonight. Explosive audio of Trump lawyer Michael Cohen threatening a reporter has leaked. Cohen calling himself Trump's fixer. And certainly here we see some of the dirty work. He's known to carry a gun in his holster on an ankle. So when he makes threats, people listen. Now, this is the first time you're actually going to hear the audio. This is from a 2015 story from then Daily Beast reporter Tim Mak that was discussing the fact that in divorce proceedings, Trump's ex-wife Ivana had used the word rape when talking about Trump, although she had later retracted any suggestion that there was a technical or physical rape. Now, the reporter had called Hope Hicks for comment, then got this angry callback from Cohen. It begins in this discussion, which you have to hear to believe, with Cohen falsely asserting the idea that legally one could not, quote, rape one's own wife, which the reporter pushed back on, and then this happened.
Today will be the day that you will regret. I know where you're going with this stupid story, and I know what you're planning on doing. And if there's any inference whatsoever, whether it's in the headline or any aspect of your article that indicates a rape, and I don't care about some small line that you're going to throw in somewhere, mark my words for it. I will make sure that you and I meet one day while we're in the courthouse, and I will take you for every penny you still don't have, and I will come after you, Daily Beast, and everybody else that you possibly know. Do not even think about going to where I know you're planning on going. And that's my warning for the day.
Michael, besides the warning, do you have a substantive comment that I can include in my piece that reflects your views on this?
I have no views because there's no story.
No story. Now, the reporter then presses Cohen for anything else on these Ivana allegations.
You write whatever you want, but rest assured, like I told Univision and like I told everybody else in the past, you could certainly look it up online. I swear as God and my children, I will find you, I will serve you personally, and I will be nothing but happy when I turn around and I get a judgment for defamation against you and the paper you work for. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Michael,
what are you, 24 freaking years old? You want you to destroy your life? It'll be my privilege to serve it to you on a freaking silver platter. Like I did that idiot from Pennsylvania, you Miss USA, because I think you're dumber than she is.
You are hearing unvarnished how Michael Cohen rolls. Now, in these new audio tapes, which again have just come out tonight, the reporter then tells Cohen he doesn't think that this is a productive conversation and asks what is being misinterpreted.
Do you think that I'm misinterpreting some of the facts here?
No, you are. Listen, my friend, don't be a smartass with me. Do you understand?
I'm giving you an opportunity.
I know you. I don't need your opportunity, you little. I know exactly who you are, and I know exactly what you do, and I know exactly the story you plan on writing. So I'm warning you. Tread very lightly, because what I'm going to do to you is going to be disgusting. Do you understand me? Don't think you're going to hide behind your pen, because it's not going to happen.
Look,
I'm more than happy to discuss it with your attorney and with your legal counsel, because you're going to need it.
I'm joined by Betsy Woodruff of the Daily Beast. Hi, Betsy.
Hey, Ari.
How you doing?
It's quite a piece of audio there. I work at the Daily Beast. I was working at the Daily Beast when Tim Mak put out that story a couple of years ago. And the really funny thing about it was the fact that Michael Cohen went on this really extraordinary rant only got the story more attention. In fact, Michael Cohen, who is sometimes portrayed as this genius fixer, made things worse for his client because he added to the story. The story became not just that Donald Trump made his wife feel violated during sex, according to divorce papers, but also that Donald Trump's lawyer launched these ridiculous, over-the-top, almost cartoon movie threats at a reporter. So he gave us two stories rather than one.
You're a seasoned reporter, and you may look at it as somewhat cartoonish. As I mentioned in the open, though, this was a person working for someone with a lot of money and resources and power as compared to the type of people they were picking on, whether it was Stormy Daniels, at least as alleged, or this reporter here. That power imbalance is something Mr. Cohen seems to try to underscore in the most serious way of saying this person's entire career is at risk. And with regard to ruining his life, I want to play a little more of this. Take a listen.
Suffer the consequence. So you do whatever you want. You want to ruin your life at the age of 20? I don't know a nicer way to put it. And I think you should go ahead and you should write the story that you plan on writing. I think you should do it. Because I think you're an idiot. All right? And I think your paper's a joke. And it's going to be my absolute pleasure to serve you with a $500 million lawsuit like I did to Univision.
This audio leaks tonight, Betsy, at a time when over 1 million pieces of evidence from Michael Cohen's office and private records, including alleged audio tapes, is going over to the feds. What does this audio indicate, in your view, as a reporter, and as you mentioned, someone who was at the same paper, about what other things might be memorialized here and whether it's going to hurt Cohen?
I think we can safely guess that Cohen probably recorded himself having conversations like this. If you listen to that conversation, it doesn't sound like it's the first time that Cohen leveled very over-the-top threats at somebody who he didn't like, someone who was trying to get not to follow through on something that he was worried about. And one thing I'd like to add here is that these threats from Cohen ended up to be entirely toothless. Tim Mack, the reporter who was on the other end of that conversation, never got served. There was no $500 million lawsuit. We never got roped up into some costly or life-altering legal battle with Michael Cohen. It was entirely toothless. It didn't go anywhere. I think what we can probably guess is that if the tapes that Michael Avenatti says do exist, they likely include conversations along the lines of this one, and it's going to be up to people to judge what that says about Michael Cohen's character and credibility and integrity.
Betsy, I don't know how busy you are. Do you have time for one more part of the tape?
Sure. Let's do it.
Let's go ahead.
You write a story that has Mr. Trump's name in it with the word rape, and I'm going to mess your life up for the rest. For as long as you're on this freaking planet, I'm going to turn around. You're going to have judgments against you for so much money, you'll never know how to get out from underneath it.
That's the last one, Betsy.
Look, I was at a beach house with Tim Mack this past weekend. I can report back that his life is going perfectly fine. It has not been messed up by Michael Cohen. The reality is that when bullies come at reporters like this, the best thing reporters and journalists can do is take some pleasure in the toothlessness and the sometimes amusing quality of the way that these people talk. And at the Daily Beast, we were really proud to go forward to publish a story that ended up being an electric, a really galvanizing moment in the campaign, and a story that helps people make sense of the character of Donald Trump and of Michael Cohen. We stood up to this bully, and it worked out perfectly fine for us, worked out perfectly fine for Tim Mack, and we are grateful to the lawyers who work at the Daily Beast for helping us make sense and helping navigate us through the entire process.
The last word on this one goes to you, Betsy Woodruff. Thank you for being here. Up ahead, Trump's Art of the Deal co-author Tony Schwartz is going to take us inside the deceit and how to fight it. Also, Howard Stern's big revelation about Donald Trump on what Trump asked him for and why Trump needs celebrity validation when we're back in just 60 seconds. Another top story tonight, Donald Trump's celebrity booster making a big revelation. Howard Stern tells David Letterman how Trump thought Stern could help Trump win the election.
Well, you know, it was a very awkward kind of thing because Donald asked me to speak at the Republican convention. I was put in a very awkward position of having to say publicly and to him that I am a Hillary Clinton supporter. I always have been. And I was honest with Donald. I said, you know, Donald, you also supported Hillary. And I said, I do consider Donald a friend, but my politics are different.
Stern was not the only celebrity who snubbed Trump.
But I'm thinking about getting some of the great sports people that I know that like me a lot. We may call it the winner's evening.
But the celebrity event many might have expected from a Trump convention did not materialize.
Who's who here in Cleveland?
All right, y'all, stop me if you heard this one before, all right? An underwear model, a duck hunter, and the guy from Happy Days all walk into a bar.
Antonio Sabato Jr., Duck Dynasty star, and Scott Baio did end up headlining, if you want to call it that. Now, Stern has interviewed Trump more than just about anyone, over 37 times in the past 2 decades.
Donald was the definition of great guest.
Yes.
You know, to me, a guest who comes on and says anything that is in his mind is a great guest. And he would get on, and no matter what I asked him, he would answer.
No matter what? Yeah, questions like this.
My daughter is beautiful, Ivanka.
By the way, your daughter.
She's beautiful.
Can I say this? A piece of ass.
Yeah.
Some of Trump's most unguarded moments were in those Stern interviews. We learned a lot more about who Trump was, or at least said he was. Revelations that some say would haunt him, including what critics say were a repetitive and obvious misogynistic view of women.
I'll go backstage before a show.
Yes.
And everyone's getting dressed. They're standing there with no clothes. Is everybody okay? And you see these incredible looking women. And so I sort of get away with things like that.
She gained about 55 pounds in a period of 9 months. She was like an eating machine. They said, how are you going to change the pageant? And I said, I'm going to get the bathing suits to be smaller and the heels to be higher.
Do you think you could now be banging 24-year-olds?
Oh, absolutely. I have no trouble.
Would you do it?
I have no problem.
But it wasn't just that kind of talk, because Howard Stern's show, especially over time, has covered all kinds of other issues. In fact, you may remember it was Trump's position on Iraq, of all things, which became a political controversy. He'd claimed in the campaign he was against the war, but he wasn't. Cue Howard Stern.
Are you for invading Iraq?
Yeah, I guess so. I wish it was. I wish the first time it was done correctly.
The celebrity obsession is carrying over. There you have the president with Kim Kardashian Wednesday. And as we've been reporting, he's also considering pardoning celebrity-style figures like Martha Stewart or Rod Blagojevich, who both appeared on The Apprentice. Now, Stern says Trump's relationship with the media and celebrity is all about how he feels.
He loves Hollywood. First of all, he loves the press. He lives for it. He loves people in Hollywood. He only wants to hobnob with them. And all of this hatred stuff directed toward him, it's not good for him. It's not good.
I'm joined by media innovator Michael Hirschhorn, who helped develop the concept of celebrity reality TV at VH1 with hits like Flavor of Love, What? I Love the 80s, Celebrity Rehab, What's Not to Like. Zelina Maxwell is an MSNBC analyst and worked on the Clinton campaign. Now, you may have had more A-listers, but you lost the Electoral College.
Yes,
so cuts both ways. Michael, what do you see here with Stern?
Well, I think he's accurately describing what Trump is doing, which is he's really supplanting reality TV. So it's ironic that, watching the Kardashian meeting with Trump, it actually may do more for Kim Kardashian than it does for Trump. Because I felt the moment Trump was elected, the whole world of the Kardashians was kind of wrecked. And what's interesting, what I'm hearing in TV circles, is that networks like MSNBC and CNN are taking the ratings from reality TV, because basically the whole world is reality TV at this point.
Can we give them back?
Please.
How does that work?
I think we know how that works and how to make that happen.
I think this is a scary moment because we are not living in a reality show. We are living with very serious issues all over the world, and Donald Trump is a textbook narcissist. We sort of gloss over this fact when we talk about him and his tendency to make every single thing, no matter what it is, about himself. But it's an inflated sense of self-importance, but it's based in a deep sense of insecurity, and so that's why he needs celebrities to validate him and to feel important, to feel, that he's someone that people are talking about and buzzing about, because essentially that's what being a celebrity is. It's just that people know who you are. That's the only difference between a regular person and a celebrity.
Well, Michael, that sounds exciting.
Well, I think, it's many celebrities I've met are massive narcissists. I think what Trump's doing is more dangerous even than that, which is, I think, to pick up on what Zerlina said, they're painting and creating a world of pseudo events and pseudo dramas that is covering over what's really happening.
You didn't watch the show last night, did you?
I did not watch the show last night.
Okay, we're just confirming.
Exactly that?
Well, we were talking about Daniel Borstein's 1962 book, which the image which goes into the pseudo events. Then it was a kind of a mild side tactic of corporations. Now it is the language of politics. I wonder, the Obama joke famously at the Correspondents' Dinner was that, Trump would be president and have to make apprentice-style decisions. How do you feel, Zerlina, witnessing this today, as we've been discussing, with apprentice contestants being put up for the pardon power?
I mean, it's clearly a signal to, the folks like Michael Cohen and others who are in legal jeopardy, but I think that it's very alarming because, just for full context, and this, you can pardon people with low low-level drug offenses who have been in prison for a long time and turned their lives around.
Why didn't you say man? And you know this.
It could be a man.
And you know
or
this
a woman.
Man. This is a Friday reference.
Because I default to
seen
woman,
Friday?
Ari.
Have you ever seen Friday?
I'm up against the Patriots.
We can, all right, and you know this,
I default
man
to
or
woman
woman.
when I talk. No, they could have pardoned somebody who deserves it, somebody who really has turned their life around, but he's not doing that. He's pardoning celebrities and flashing names, and I think that he's just really taking the power and abusing it by not going through the whole process and taking it seriously. These are people's lives at stake.
But Michael, how much of this, again, these questions matter now because he's president, how much of this is his own emotional need? The Howard Stern theory being that this is what Trump needs to feel good, and how much of it is a diabolical sort of content strategy?
Well, I would say for people who want to be on television, everyone except you, there's a deep desire and need for affirmation, right? And I spoke to a celebrity psychologist.
Having you ironically affirm me as an exception within that comment was just some very high-level stuff you're doing.
Right. It's sort of a counter-trolling, as it were.
Ooh.
Yes.
Counter-trolling. We covered trolling this week, too. You're on a roll.
So there's a kind of soul death that soul death that I see in a lot of celebrity culture, which is that you need public acclamation to fill the hole that you have, that you're not getting elsewhere, and that's what is clearly
because you don't have good relationships with friends and family.
Correct. Or the world, or you have a frantic desire to have your racist father approve of you.
Wow. And you know what my producer just said to me? Rap. We're just getting to the darkness in the center of the human experience, and I'm getting
narcissists are people who grow up to become narcissists are frequently raised by narcissistic parents.
Which makes sense. Final quickly, because we are wrapping. Flavor of Love, your proudest achievement?
I may go to hell for that, but yes, I'll stick by it.
Michael Hirschhorn and Zelina Maxwell, fascinating discussion. You both brought a lot to the table. Coming up, are Donald Trump's lies getting worse? We're going to talk to a man who warns the false claims are getting more blatant, but there's a way to fight it. Tony Schwartz is here. And first, former Speaker John Boehner out of politics, and look at him speaking his mind.
There is no Republican Party. There's a Trump Party. The Republican Party is kind of taking a nap somewhere. Donald Trump, who I know well, was one of my supporters. When I was Speaker, I was having a rough week. Trump would call me, pat me on the back, cheer me up. We played a lot of golf together. But President, really? The two most surprised people in the entire world that night were Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump. Hillary Clinton thought she was going to win. Donald Trump thought he was going to lose.
Donald Trump is a known liar, but is he getting even more emboldened? My next guest says yes. Friend of the Beat, Tony Schwartz, co-author of The Art of the Deal. He's explained lying is second nature to Trump. He has the ability to convince himself that whatever he is saying is true, or sort of true, or at least ought to be. Now, that's an important point today, as nuclear peace and economic policy can hinge on debates over whether Trump is deceiving us or sometimes himself. Now, some of Trump's lies are patently obvious.
Telling them that you lost the popular vote because of millions of illegal votes, 3 to 5 million illegal votes. Where is the evidence of that?
I said it, and I said it strongly, because what's going on with voter fraud is horrible. We need the wall. We've started building the wall. As you know, we've signed more bills, and I'm talking about through the legislature, than any president ever.
But Trump's not only a blunt instrument, he also builds misleading claims on a kernel of truth. He said he ended Obamacare, a way to puff up his elimination of the insurance mandate, and he's twisted his own deadline for DACA. But as trust in public truth itself can fade, the risk of corruption gets even higher. Take this week's important news about Puerto Rico. A study finding that Hurricane Maria led to almost 5,000 deaths, a far higher number than the U.S. government or Donald Trump had ever conceded. And while Trump didn't know the actual number at the time, he did use his bully pulpit to play down Puerto Rico's struggle.
If you look at a real catastrophe like Katrina, and you look at the tremendous hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people that died, and you look at what happened here with really a storm that was just totally overpowering. Nobody's ever seen anything like this. What is your death count as of this moment? 16 people certified. 16 people versus in the thousands.
Well, today we can tell you we are in the thousands. Now, at the time, that was, of course, a different type of statement than lying about the Electoral College. But if it feels like a blizzard of different levels of deceit are hard to even keep up with, our next guest says that's part of the point. Tony Schwartz is also CEO of the Energy Project and best-selling author of The Way We're Working Isn't Working. What do you mean here about the nature of his deceit?
That we're at a point where he lies about everything. In fact, lying now is his number one tactic. I believe that he is fully aware that Mueller and perhaps the New York investigators have got him dead to right. He knows that he's not going to wind his way out of that except by lying, and lying means destroying their credibility by saying things that aren't true.
You think that, I mean, you've worked around him as we've noted, you think that what Michael Cohen has could be bad for Trump?
You know, I was tempted to say I don't think, I know, but that maybe is one, that probably is too strong. I have an overwhelming feeling that there are a blizzard of crimes that Michael Cohen was well aware of, in fact, helped to engineer.
And so your working theory of Donald Trump in that hypothetical, say that the feds are right, that they did search for a reason, that there is evidence of crimes, that when Trump knows something like that, he is essentially knowing information. And then he does something between knowing the information and turning it all around into these lies. But you say that sometimes involves deceiving himself.
Well, I think that when I was around Trump, he had a kind of sense of humor about his lies. Remember, I came up with that phrase, truthful hyperbole. I mean, it was just, you know, he's a real estate guy. He thought it was fun. And he knew he was doing it. He would wink his eye at me, literally. Today, I think he has gotten so deeply enmeshed, he has nobody around him anymore who would ever challenge anything he would say. And he feels under enormous stress. So I believe today he believes what he is saying, even when he says this is a blue and red cup. He believes that it's blue, or that it's red.
He sees
now
red.
I'm getting confused.
Well, this is part of how it works.
Can we work on it?
You're also teaching me that he's a winker. I haven't seen him wink.
I know. I don't think he's been winking the last. I think I may have said to you another time that he used to say to me all the time, Tony, can you believe it? Can you believe it?
Right, which goes to that showmanship. You mentioned that the way it comes out of real estate, where puffing is an actual term. You are allowed to puff, which is to harmlessly inflate things. You are not allowed to defraud. That's actually a difference in the law. Barbara Rez, who you know worked with him, and has many positive things to say about him, but she says even then he would sell like it was gold and put in the cheapest stuff possible. Take a look.
But instead of building an average building, we're going to make it the finest building in the world.
The floor was the absolute cheapest wood floor you could get. It talked about packetry, marquetry, that kind of thing. It was nonsense. It was cheap tiles glued down. The kitchens were garbage.
Garbage, and she built Trump Tower.
Well, it's a long way from lying about a parquet floor to lying about the most consequential issues of our time. And that's what is frightening, is that he is now spending a vast percentage of his energy, even says this, a vast percentage of his energy trying to destroy the credibility of the people who are actually just saying facts.
But he seems to understand that there's more appeal to conspiracies than even being pandered to. Take a look at the birtherism. We're here on a week where Roseanne compared a prominent African American to an ape and lost her show over it. Here was the birtherism that he felt was underserved in the political marketplace.
Why doesn't he show his birth certificate? I want him to show his birth certificate. I want him to show his birth certificate.
Do you accept that President Obama was born in the United States,
No,
is not Muslim?
I really don't know. President Barack Obama was born in the United States, period.
What's happening there?
He knew he was lying. So that's the shift that's happened, Ari, is that when he was doing his birtherism shtick, it was very much in the service of building a constituency that was willing to believe the kind of conspiracy theories that people like Roseanne send out in 100 tweets. Today, I don't think he makes a distinction. He doesn't know anymore. So when he says something like he did today, that Comey was not fired for the very reason that he said, and we can see on video, he was fired, namely over the Russia investigation, he actually believes that he did not fire Comey
and that's
for that reason.
And that's important because it suggests that to some degree he's also working to wound his own emotional situation, if that's what he needs to hear himself say. I wanted to explore that with you the next time you're on.
Thank
Tony
you,
Schwartz,
sir.
as always, thank you for being here. And ahead, another important story. Andrea Constand speaking out about the night that Bill Cosby sexually assaulted her. That's next. Something rare happening in the wake of the Bill Cosby trial. It's been over a decade, but we are now publicly hearing for the first time from the woman whose accusations against Cosby led to that conviction. Cosby found guilty last month on 3 counts of aggravated indecent assault against Andrea Constand. Now, she says he drugged and assaulted her in 2004, an event that she's now recounting in this exclusive interview with NBC's Kate Snow.
What is your mind saying?
My mind is saying, move your hands, kick, can you do anything? I don't want this. Why is this person doing this? And me not being able to react in any specific way. So I was limp. I was a limp noodle.
Did he say anything?
No. No, he said nothing that I could recall. I was in and out of consciousness.
And you don't remember being able to speak?
Inside, I was crying out inside in my throat, in my mind, for this to stop, and I couldn't do anything.
Constand also discusses how Cosby's celebrity affected her.
Did you tell anybody else about
time.
what had happened at the time?
I did not.
Why not?
I didn't think anybody would believe me. It was Bill Cosby. It was Dr. Huxtable. I thought I was the only person that he did this to. Who's going to believe me?
Now, long after that, and all the way up until the conviction, Cosby's team was calling Constand a liar and accusing her of trying to profit off this whole situation.
Andrea Constand was not telling the truth. The jury should acquit Mr. Cosby of all of these charges simply based on the fact that she lied.
Miss Constand is like Robin Hood. She steals from the wealthy, but she gives to herself opposed to the poor. She conned Mr. Cosby out of $3.4 million. Andrea Constand made up these fantastical stories in order to get rich.
Now, there was a civil case, and money is often the only restitution available there. But Kate Snow discusses why money was not the factor in the criminal trial. Take a look.
This took 13 years to finally become the criminal case and 2 criminal trials before he was convicted. She could have quit at any point. She had a civil settlement way back in 2006. She got some money from Bill Cosby, $3 million. She could have gone away and said, I'm not going to fight this battle anymore. But she talks about with me tomorrow night on Dateline why she kept going. And it was for all the other women. She knew that if she didn't walk the walk, that nobody would get justice.
As I mentioned, this is a rare interview, and I want to tell you, you can catch the entire Kate Snow interview and discussion with Andrea Constand on Dateline. That airs tomorrow night, 10 p.m. Eastern on NBC. And I don't usually say this, but we have something very special tomorrow. There will be a takeover edition of Fallback Friday with 2 legends from the great hip-hop show. You know it, you remember it. Yo MTV Raps. MTV is actually relaunching the series, and those originals, Dr. Dre and DJ Ricka Scribble, will be here, and I promise I won't go any farther than I just have with the references. That's my ceiling, but I am looking forward to it.
Hey, it's Chris Hayes from MSNBC. You know, every day I come to the office and we make a television show. And every day I think to myself, there's so much more I want to talk about. And so this is our podcast. It's called Why Is This Happening? And the whole idea behind it is to get to the root of the things that we see play out every day. They're driven by big ideas. Each week, I sit down with a person uniquely suited to explain why this is happening.
New episodes of Why Is This Happening? Every Tuesday. Listen for free wherever you get your podcasts.